Now, Socrates concludes this argument with a rather strong statement. You find it on the bottom of your page 22, right? And, right, after demonstrating that all of these nasty effects, these nasty, foolish, hurtful, wrong-headed things emerge from this kind of desire for pleasure that we call hubris, right, as a result of eros, right, this unreasoning desire that overpowers a person's considered impulse to do right and is driven to take pleasure in beauty. It's force reinforced by its kindred desires for blah, 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 etc., etc. Your page, what was it, 18? Something like that. His definition for love. Let's just be sure. All right, your page 18, middle of the page. As a result of this form of love, what Socrates has shown is that by necessity, right, all of these hurtful actions emerge from it, right? Of course, right? If love is a form of hubris, the unreasoning desire for pleasure, right, then of necessity, all of these things, it's going to hurt your mind, it's going to hurt your physique, it's going to hurt your, possessions, it's going to be hurtful, jealousy is going to arise from it, right? Rather forcefully, Socrates concludes, right? These points are, points, your page 22, these are points you should bear in mind, my boy. You should know that a friendship, the friendship of a lover arises without any goodwill at all. No, like food, its purpose is to sate hunger. Do wolves love lambs? That's how lovers befriend a boy. Right? And what Socrates does is concludes in sort of a sloppy sort of way. He says, since love is so bad, right, all of these points are reversible, right? It shows, on the other hand, that he says on page 23, so instead, I say in a word that every shortcoming for which we blamed a lover has its contrary advantage, and the non-lover possesses it. Right? Why make a long speech for it, etc., etc., etc. Right? Now, what Socrates has to do now, right? He points out that his divine sign was saying, "No, Socrates, don't argue that." Right? It's not right. It's not what you believe. Right? So what Socrates needs to do is compose a palinode, or a poem of apology. Why? Because, like we've seen from other Socratic dialogues, Socrates believes in the Greek gods, and what's more, Eros is one of the Greek gods. Right? So, if Eros is one of the gods, and the gods are good, then love has to be good. Right? And what's more, he knows that there are problems with the argument that he's constructing here. Right? So what he's just done is made his job way harder, right? Lysias' argument, you could say, okay, these are problems with love, right? And they're not problems with not love. Okay, I see what you're saying, Lysias, but I still think there might be something you're not looking at, right? I still think there might be something to love. All Lysias has shown is that at least it's likely, right, that non-love is to be preferred to love, right? What Socrates has done through this deductive argument form is shown that always and everywhere, by necessity, love is hubris is bad, and therefore love is bad, right? And wrapped around this central argument, right, all of the other smaller arguments are, right? So what Socrates has to do, right, is knock down his own argument, which he's just made stronger, right? And remember, he's done this because he's trying to get at what is truer or best. Now, the only way to knock down a deductive argument, unlike an inductive argument where you can say, I see what you're saying, but nuh-uh. Right? What Socrates has to do is not call a question to the conclusion, but one of the premises. Right? And like I told you earlier, love is hubris. It's a form of madness. It's a form of craziness. You go out of your normal, rational mind when you're in love. Socrates is going to maintain that. The premise that he's going to question is that hubris is bad. Right? That madness is bad. Right? And now, with his skull in the clear light of day, the bag off his head, what Socrates starts is a poem of apology to love. Right? He points out on your page 27, right, that there is no truth to that story, that when a lover is available to you, you should give your favors to a man who doesn't love you instead because he's in control of himself while the lover has lost his head. That would have been fine to say if madness were bad, pure, and simple, but in fact, the best things we have come from madness when it's given as a gift from the god. Now, what Socrates does over the next couple of pages is point out that there are at least 3 kinds of madness that aren't bad at all, but rather good. Right? And I have those written over here. The first one he examines is prophetic madness. Right? Now, what he's not talking about here is Dionne Warwick and her psychic friends. What he's talking about here is sort of almost a psychic, prophetic intuition. Right? You ever just get a bad feeling about a situation, leave it, and then find out that something bad has happened in that situation? Right? Intuition, right? This sort of prophetic intuition is what's part and parcel to these good results that tend to come out of it. When it works, it really works. Now, I come from an Irish Catholic family, so every woman in my mother's side of the family thinks they're psychic. I knew that would happen. I just knew it. Right? So prophetic madness, especially in ancient Greek terms, remember that's why Socrates knew that he was the wisest man in Athens, right, is a good kind of madness. Secondly, cathartic madness. Right? Shakespeare was fond of talking about these kinds of madness. Cathartic madness is kind of going a little bit crazy in order to regain your sanity. Right? Think about it in terms of these 2 examples. Spring break, what do you do? Sorry, reading week. Do you read? Do you do your papers? Do you work now that you don't have to go to class for a week? Of course not. You go to Cancun or somewhere. You blow off some steam, right? You have a vacation at home, right? You go party with your buddies, right? And you know what you find is that you're more energized and more ready to work, right? After you've gone a little bit crazy. This is why marriage counselors give married people who aren't getting along those Nerf pads to beat one another with, right? It doesn't hurt one another, but it blows off steam and makes you feel better, right? Or one more example, right? When things are going really bad, you're having a really bad day, you ever just want to, just scream, right? Doesn't make any sense. It doesn't take the cause of your problems away. It doesn't do anything really to address your problems. It makes you feel better, right? And after you've done that, you can calmly, rationally approach the problem. So cathartic madness, another good kind of madness. And then finally, poetic madness. Anyone who plays an instrument knows that it doesn't happen well when you're not inspired. Right? When you're not inspired, right? The poetry, right? The literature, the use of the instrument, the music just does not flow out of you. To the ancient Greeks, this was like being inspired by the divine muses. Right? When inspiration strikes, right, it gives us some of the most beautiful, intelligent, important, scientific, artistic, and cultural advances that we have. So poetic madness is yet another good form of madness. Right? So all of these kinds of being out of your right mind are in fact good. Right? So, while love is a form of madness, Socrates wants to argue that not all madness is bad. And this calls question to the conclusion that love is bad. Now, I should point out to you that what's left for Socrates to do is make an argument in terms of love being a 4th kind of madness that is also beneficial.